Welcome back into the podcast. I am excited to have this man on. I have booked this guy as a producer many times for SiriusXM and other outlets, but never had him on as a guest myself to talk to him. But when you write an incredible feature piece, and this guy probably writes the best NFL feature pieces in NFL media, when you write one about the history of the Chicago Bears quarterbacks and their failures, and if Caleb Williams is finally going to change that curve, Tyler Dunne of GoLongTD.com, you have to have him on, and he joins me now. Ty, Bill Zimmerman, how are you?
Bill, that was one hell of an introduction, man. Thank you so much. It's great to finally see you here in the StreamYard world, because we've talked, we've texted, like you said, the SiriusXM days, but it's great to just kind of BS some Bears with you in the flesh, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before I get into your piece, which I know you obviously focus on Caleb and you focus on the issues with Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields, I want to rewind a little bit further back than that, because to me, as a Bears fan and someone who covers the team, I look at this and kind of go, Jim Harbaugh was drafted in 87 and he was okay in Chicago. I mean, he wasn't an elite player, but there's a lot of things that went into that. Obviously had success when he left. But I want to kind of go over the last 30 years and cite three things the Bears did prior that shows that, honestly, even with the failures of Trubisky and Fields, you actually kind of can see the franchise figuring out how to do this more and more. And what I mean by that is, if you go back to 1997, they traded a first-round pick for Rick Meyer, who was already a failed prospect, and just Seattle absolutely fleeced them in that trade. Then after that fails, 2 years later, they draft Cade McNown, who I would have loved to have seen the interviews they had with him to determine his character, which he was a pariah the immediate he showed up. The entire team didn't like him. He was parking in handicapped parking spaces all over UCLA. That was out in the newspaper. Like, everyone knew about this, that this guy was kind of his loose cannon. They went for it anyway. He doesn't last a couple years. And then they do Rex Grossman, who is the exact opposite of that, where he was a really good teammate and the team really loved him, but that was a first round pick. And talking to people who did a lot of, draft analysis back then, second round, some even had a third round grade on him. So that was a serious overdraft in terms of bringing in Rex Grossman. I remember being just out of college then and just going, well, Steve Spurrier quarterbacks never work out in the NFL. And sure enough, Rex didn't work out. So you kind of see this. And then obviously they trade the 2 first round picks for Jay Cutler, who's obviously arguably the second or third best quarterback in franchise history. So before we get to Trubisky and Fields, like, you kind of see this path going of complete, just horrendous choices that kind of slightly get better as they're getting closer, as kind of, the fish rots at the head. So when you're talking about from regime to regime, that McCaskey and then Ted Phillips as the president, kind of figuring out a little bit more and more as to how to actually find a franchise quarterback.
You just nailed it. In writing this series, I wasn't quite sure where to even start, right? Like, how far back do you take this? I started with Mitch Trubisky, 12-4 Bears, a double doink away from crushing the Rams in the next game and getting to the NFC Championship game. And who knows, maybe they win the Super Bowl that year. But you can take this back era to era to era, and that just speaks to the organizational dysfunction. I mean, it's hard to always put your finger on that, but you just put it perfectly. Like, the fish rots at the head. There's something amiss here with the Bears, and I think it's the fact that the owner, the GM, and the coach and the quarterback are never aligned.
Yeah,
it seems as if a regime comes in and they inherit a quarterback. They give that quarterback a chance for a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, and it doesn't work out. They eventually get their guy, and it might even be in a weird situation where they're lame ducks, and they're allowed to trade a future first-round pick to get a Justin Fields. Like, something is always off. It's not normal, and it's not a coincidence that the team a few hours to the north, Green Bay, that doesn't have an owner, they can make the hard choices. They can just take Aaron Rodgers when Brett Favre is still in his prime. They can just take Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers is still in his prime. So I think that, I'm not saying that the Bears need to get rid of their owner to win games, but they need everybody on the same page. And maybe once and for all, everybody is on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that with Matt Eberflus, because that was the big debate after this season in terms of trying to get everything to align. But when you're kind of talking about the organizational dysfunction, the one thing that this organization has continued to do the last two times, so I want to kind of bring this up in kind of a general thought, is the idea of having that rookie quarterback sit. And we hear, you cite Patrick Mahomes, you cite Aaron Rodgers, you cite Jordan Love now as these guys that got to sit. And so the Bears try and mimic that with Mike Glennon to Mitch Trubisky and Andy Dalton to Justin Fields. But to me, there's a big difference between sitting behind an established veteran like Alex Smith, who was leading that team to the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great. When you're talking about sitting behind guys, or Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre too, when you're talking about guys, when you're sitting behind an established veteran, I think there's absolutely a reason to sit a quarterback. We'll see how this works with Michael Penix, which I know was a head scratcher for a lot of people, with this draft with the Falcons. But the Bears don't have that. The Bears didn't draft a guy in 2014 to sit behind the established veteran in Jay Cutler for a couple of years. They just signed Mike Glennon, signed Andy Dalton, and just paired them. And I think the idea of the bridge quarterback, and if you disagree, you tell me, the idea of just getting a bridge quarterback to basically keep the seat warm without playing the rookie, especially a highly drafted rookie, to me, it looks flawed. And not just in Chicago, but in a lot of other places as well. And I think there's a difference that we're just not talking about in the NFL about sitting behind an established quarterback versus a bridge.
And it's, you can't account for the human interactions, right? Like, how is that incumbent? How is that veteran going to take the presence of a rookie? It's very rarely going to be this hunky-dory situation. Everybody, singing Christmas carols and getting along. Like, everybody's competitive. And I think that Green Bay, they kind of knew how Aaron Rodgers would react to Jordan Love being in the room. He'd be pissed off. He'd be very upset about it. But that's when Aaron Rodgers is at his best. He is an all-time grudge holder. He uses that stuff for good. So I think Brian Gutekunst knew exactly what he was doing. And it almost cost him his job, possibly. I mean, Aaron Rodgers put it out there that the summer of 2021 that Gutekunst had to be fired for him to end his off-season long holdout, hostage, whatever you want to say he did to the Packers. And Mark Murphy, the team president, stood by his general manager, to his credit, Brian Gutekunst, and eventually Rodgers returned and he held his press conference just blaming the organization. So it can get messy, is my point. Like, it can potentially get messy, but in theory, on paper, if it's done right, it can work. I mean, the perfect example being Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. So I get it. I get why the Bears have done that in the past, or have tried to go that route in the past. Like, even to the lame duck regime, even to think Andy Dalton to Justin Fields, it's not a bad last-ditch effort for Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, because Andy Dalton was still a pretty darn good quarterback. I mean, I remember just talking to Allen Robinson for this series. He was excited. I mean, this is a receiver who's played for Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, 3 quarterbacks who didn't really have that processing, who couldn't make those split-second decisions. He was ready to rock with a veteran quarterback, and there's a coach on that team who insists to this day that team wins 10 games, and they're all still there coaching that team. But I don't know about that, but they saw a formula there with Dalton. Now, would Justin Fields have developed? That same coach says no, that there was a fatal flaw there, right? That lack of processing, that if you fuzzy it up, if you muddy the picture, if you play a little cover 2 and force him to get off that first read, that you either have that or you don't have it. And even Allen Robinson said that through all of his experiences. So in that sense, it would have been broken. Even if Dalton was good, I don't know if Fields ever really develops into what they hoped he would be. So there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of variables. But if you have a veteran who isn't Mike Glennon, right, who isn't some bum that you're overpaying and shouldn't even be starting in the NFL, and it's a good player, and it's a rookie with upside, it can work. But man, I I think that you see in the NFC North, and I'm writing about this right now, Bill, like 4 teams taking 4 very different approaches at the quarterback position.
Sure.
The Bears are probably living the best case scenario. I think every GM dreams of having a shot at a transcendent talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bears fans, like, they don't even know how to wrap their head around this whole thing, because this is just something that Bears fans haven't experienced in basically their entire lifetime. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But let's talk about the issues there a little bit. And I like how you kind of split everything up about, organizational dysfunction that we've talked about here a lot already, but also missing on evaluations and the playing in the market of Chicago. And it can be a hostile market. Fans can turn on you quickly. I mean, famously, I don't even know if you know this, after Mitch Trubisky was drafted, like a week later, the Bulls at the time were in the playoffs, and he went to a playoff game. They put him on the big screen, and 20,000 Bulls fans just erupted in boos. Like, they had no interest in Mitch Trubisky that year. I think everybody wanted Deshaun Watson or even possibly Jamal Adams, but nobody wanted Trubisky. So that's where the city started off on that foot with that quarterback. So he had to come from behind, in essence. He was already behind the 8 ball, but you do the same thing with kind of just not handling it properly, where, there's been plenty of rumors that Ryan Pace hid the pick from John Fox the entire offseason. He didn't even want the coach to know what he was doing. So you talk about dysfunction there. Then, of course, they changed coaches on him. So Trubisky's got year 2 has to learn an entirely new offense, new coaching staff. But at least in 2018, they bring in the offensive mind with Matt Nagy and the Allen Robinson and Trey Burton, and they beef up the O-line a little. Like, they tried to put the right pieces in place to have Trubisky succeed at that point. But I do also have to wonder, even before we get to the Brad Childress, Matt Nagy issue, which I think is fascinating, is how much damage had they already done? OTAs May of 2018, and I know Mitch had a good year that year, of already kind of not giving him any cohesion, not giving him the same coaches, the same, the same terminology. How much more difficult did they make it on Mitch right out of the gate?
I totally forgot about that bowl scene. You're right. That was unbelievable. I sat down with Mitch Trubisky for a story at Bleacher Report into that draft, and then after his first year in Chicago. And this was a quarterback doing everything in his power to embrace the moment, embrace the scrutiny. I mean, he knew what he was stepping into. He knew the history of the quarterback position in Chicago and was going above and beyond to perfect his leadership, to get to know everybody in the building, from his wide receivers to the janitors to the smoothie makers. I mean, I think when it came to what you're talking about, the all-encompassing role of the face of the team, the quarterback, he owned it. And I think at that point, things are looking good. I mean, you're getting a coach who was with Andy Reid, who was around the apprenticeship of Patrick Mahomes, and who had a really good scheme, a proven scheme. So, in a defense, by the way, that's elite. Khalil Mack. I think at that point, things are on the up. And those wins started to snowball. The confidence started to grow. It wasn't always pretty, right? Like, maybe if you take that Tampa game out, we're having a slightly different conversation. But by and large, a formula worked there. That this quarterback in this system, if he limits his mistakes, makes some plays with his legs, looks for Allen Robinson, feeds off his defense, gets a running game going, you can win 12 games. Vic Fangio is the defensive coordinator. He had Sean McVay's offense figured out.
Yeah,
which and working on this story, I'd forgotten how Bill Belichick used that blueprint to shut down McVay and the Rams in that Super
there's
Bowl.
that famous NFL films of McVay going, okay, so they're doing the Bears defense on us. Like, he just said it right out, and he still couldn't figure it out.
I mean, to this day, Allen Robinson is convinced like that is a team that should have gotten to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl. And it's hard. It's hard to, I mean, they would have had to beat the Saints in New Orleans, right? That's a tough game. But with the way that defense was playing and the confidence that Trubisky had, like, I keep coming back to that throw to Robinson on what should have been a game-winning drive where he gets drilled. Like, it's a back shoulder to the inside shoulder on a corner out to Robinson. If he's a hair off, it's intercepted. If he's a hair late in his decision-making process, he's sacked. I mean, this was a quarterback full of confidence. That season, that postseason, one double doink, one hire, and things just go haywire. So up until that point, I think things were trending the right direction.
Yeah, no, it really felt like that. And I remember I sent out a tweet after that Eagles playoff game that the Mitch Trubisky is not an NFL quarterback. That narrative died tonight. All these things. I mean, the Bears fans and Bears content creators were, in full support of this guy. I'm arguing on Twitter with Ryan Clark and Nina Kimes, who were still down on him. Like the amount of, there was so much support behind him at that point. And I think the part in the article here where you're talking about Brad Childress coming in and poisoning the mind of Matt Nagy, and where a lot of things went south internally at that point. I spoke with someone who was part of that regime, and you talked about that loss to the Green Bay Packers to start the season in 2019. I talked to someone who said, like, everybody in the building knew they were doomed before that game. Like, there was just this dark cloud because of everything that had happened in training camp. And you really, just displayed it, and wrote about it perfectly about what happened and what was going on. And I would sit there and say, like, when I'm arguing with really smart football people in 2018 and coming into 2019 who are saying, no, there's things missing from Mitch's game. He's not going to make that jump, because that's what Bears fans thought, that this was going to be year 3. He's going to make the big jump. He's going to 4,000 yards, 30 plus touchdowns. And of course, everything goes backwards because of Nagy and Childress. And I would sit there and say, perhaps Brad Childress came into this with, a more objective mind, where he wasn't being, I don't want to say blinded, but, all this success that was heavily on the defense, given the offense short fields, a lot of turnovers, a lot of defensive touchdowns in 2018, where maybe the Bears brass and coaching staff didn't see some of the warts that they needed to see. But I would also give the on the other side of the coin, you've got Trubisky. You are obviously going with him in 2019. There's no reason not to be fully supportive. If Brad wants to say, Matt, look, there's some things here, this may not work, but like, let's take his talents and let's see what we can get out of him, because they're not bringing in another quarterback. Chase Daniel's not the answer, at the backup at that time. You've got to be fully in support of Mitch. And then at the end of 2019, that's when those conversations need to be had if he doesn't take those leaps. So while I kind of see both sides of that, where Brad Childress is going, hey man, this may not be the franchise quarterback this franchise needs, but at the same time, he is the quarterback of 2019, and he needs to be supported fully by the coaching staff and not dressed down and all the things that you talked about that happened with Nagy and his coaching staff.
I couldn't agree more. I think that, those are and I get that counter argument. I get it. Maybe Brad Childress is doing the Bears a noble service. Like, you're pointing out flaws that are ingrained and will come back to bite you, where at some point. I get that, but so much of this position is between the ears. Like, look no further than a Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I've spent some time around the Miami Dolphins, and I mean, this was a quarterback who thought he was finished with Brian Flores. His confidence was absolutely beat down. I mean, he was looking in the mirror wondering, do I suck? I mean, I think he has said that on the record. Like, am I done? I mean, was it the last game of the season or second to last against the Titans? I mean, him and Flores had it out. Who knew where his career was going to go at that point? I think Tua didn't know. Mike McDaniel comes in, and his confidence is just completely refueled. I mean, there's something to be said for belief. And to your point, it's not like the Bears can hop into the time machine, go back to 2017 and draft Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Like, your quarterback is Mitch Trubisky. You're off of a 12-win season. There's a lot of good here, right? Like, give man-to-man defense, it's going to tear it up. And you've got an elite defense. You've got a potential future Hall of Famer, Khalil Mack. You've got a lot to work with here. Why not make the absolute best of your situation as is, when especially your coaches believed in the quarterback more than the personnel side? That was another surprising element to this all, is the people who drafted Mitch, they believed in Mitch, but Matt Nagy and his staff had higher grades on him at that point than Ryan Pace and the personnel side. So for the coaches to kind of flip, not all of them, I think Dave Ragone kind of understood it. He was a former quarterback. He knows the ups and downs that go into the position. But for the head man to flip like that, with Brad Childress at his side, you're firing yourself, really. I mean, you are. You're inevitably just going to make it harder on yourself, because who's the first person to know that the coaches are losing belief in the quarterback? It's the quarterback. And it would have been just a few weeks into that season that Trubisky could tell something was up here, and something got into his head, and he couldn't get that out of his head, right? They had a lot of resources available. Like a lot of these teams do, mental coaches, sports psychologists, all these. But at that point, it was too far gone, and I don't think he ever really got it back, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I really don't think he did. And I was a much bigger Matt Nagy supporter than probably pretty much anyone else in Chicago. But I will say, and it wasn't the first time I had heard the little piece you had with Trubisky about him Mitch getting blown off by Nagy at the end of the year. That was unprofessional and uncalled for. That never should have happened. And I was disappointed when I found out that Nagy did something like that. But at the same time, the organization moves on. And this is where you come into another level of organizational dysfunction, where basically Justin Fields was almost doomed before he was even drafted, because, the Bears organization, the fish, right? The rotting from the top there. I mean, basically told the Nagy Pace regime, all right, you need to figure out the quarterback situation in 2021 and make the playoffs. And of course, they go for Russell Wilson, which, that makes sense, right? If you're going to try and do this, get the veteran quarterback and see what you can do. But once that fell through, there was no way to marry the two things. And that's where you've got a regime trying to save their jobs. They're not doing what's best for the organization. They're doing what's best for themselves at that point, while still trying to fit what their bosses wanted them to do. It's two pieces that can't be married. No one's telling Dan Quinn in Washington that you have to make the playoffs this year with Jaden Daniels. It makes no sense, right? But that's what this Bears organization tried to do in 2021.
Yeah, it's nuts. And you don't see this out of normal franchises. And I think that's why the Bears kind of went out and went the Kevin Warren route eventually. Like, let's get somebody with some football experience, some football sense to kind of oversee the operation. Let's try to find some synergy here that's been lost for generations. And maybe they have that now. I don't want to jump too far ahead, because that's another conversation, like Poles, Eberflus, Caleb Williams, all of that. But it is bizarre. And it just speaks to why things just kind of keep spinning in the mud for the Chicago Bears. And they did. And spinning in the mud, I mean, Andy Dalton slips on the sideline, and all of a sudden Justin Fields is playing. All of a sudden a quarterback that you thought might even be your third stringer, because he's that far away from being ready to play in the NFL, but you give him the second team reps because you want him to get those scout team reps. All of a sudden he's your quarterback in September. And you've got to dumb the offense down. And it's this weird combination of what Matt Nagy wants and what Bill Lazor wants. I mean, Allen Robinson said, I didn't know what the hell we were doing out there. He didn't have a clue. He goes, I guess you could call it multiple. It was a strange, like, if you're trying to, that's why you have to have such a clear vision at the top, right, Bill? Like, if you're trying to compete for the playoffs, break in a rookie quarterback, yet have a head coach who's an offensive mind, yet you have an offensive coordinator who wants to do his stuff. And you're off of 12-4, 8-8, 8-8. Like, what in the hell are you? I don't think the Bears didn't even know, and that speaks to ownership. That speaks to a lack of leadership, and that's why maybe it is worth 33.3%, right? And when I think of that breakdown of thirds, as that front office person put it to me, I tend to think evaluation probably deserves to be 40 or 50% at least, because
sure,
what did Trubisky do post Chicago, but it's hard to quantify organizational dysfunction, and it's been real with the Bears for a long time.
Yeah, no, it really has. And when we're talking about that 2021 season, if you're Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, and Justin Fields is not playing this year, that's it, end of story. He needs to sit. Okay, fine. Nick Foles was on the roster. So I get it if Justin Fields is your QB2 on game day, because like with the Rams and stuff, they had packages and they were getting his athleticism in the game. Okay, fine. So Justin Fields has to finish that game against Cincinnati where Dalton gets hurt. But if you have conviction that Justin Fields needs to sit, you have an opportunity with Nick Foles. Say, all right, Nick, you're starting. Justin, you're still QB2. You have an opportunity to do that, but you took the plan that you had from draft day to Labor Day and tore it up because of one injury. You had to have a plan in place if Andy Dalton got hurt, and they clearly didn't.
Meanwhile, speaking of this being a human business and those interactions mattering, Fields and Foles didn't get along. They didn't like each other very much. So you've got that element too. They probably should have just bit the bullet and cut him because nobody's going to trade for Nick Foles at that point. But kept him on the roster. It was ugly off the field. It was ugly on the field. And everybody got fired in the end. And who's the one person to survive? It's Justin Fields, right? Because he's the quarterback that was drafted. And then a new regime comes in, and then they try to make it. We all take the bait on Justin Fields. I mean, you can go back and listen to our podcast. I'm sure there's episodes I'm drooling over his play. It's intoxicating. It's fun. He's athletic. He ran for 1,000 yards. Like, you can talk yourself into this quarterback because we have seen teams just rip apart their offense for a sublime talent, and it works. I mean, Lamar Jackson being the perfect example of all of that. But I think 3 years into seeing what Justin Fields can give you, you've seen it's not built to last the way he plays. And then he publicly declares that he wants to do it his way. I get Ryan Poles finally 2 years in saying, no mas. I mean, they really should have traded him after that Washington game, really, to maximize value.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that you brought that up in the piece about, trading him early. But, that at the same time, I mean, the issue there, I think fans would have revolted because, I mean, the entire fan base thought this is it. Justin Fields has figured it out because he had the Washington game. And even though they lost, throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, whatever it was against Denver the week before, like, all right, this is it. Justin Fields has figured it out. If they traded him then, I don't know what the fans would have done at that point. But yeah, it did seem like the regime was shifting. But, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I don't want to just pile on him. But the Justin Fields, the issues that he had with Nick Foles that you talked about, I had Josh Lucas, the former Bears director of player personnel, on this podcast a couple months ago. And he said that. He goes, it didn't work with Justin Fields' rookie year. We thought we had these great mentors for him. They did not get along. Like, myself and Josh caught a lot of heat. Basically, where you're piling on this guy, you're making it up. This can't be true. Fields is a great guy. Fields is a great leader. And look, you even said that perhaps the Fields' great locker room presence still may be a bit overblown. But I look at it and say, look, there's nothing. I mean, Justin Fields, his rookie year in the preseason, when he was asked, what'd you think about the speed of the NFL? After his first game, he goes, it was a lot slower than I thought. I'm fine. Like, where it was like, okay, Justin, if you say so. And then obviously had a lot of problems that rookie year. I think there's nothing wrong with admitting that maybe a guy who was a Heisman Trophy contender, winning basically every game he played at Ohio State, comes to the Bears, needs to be humbled a little bit, and has that happen to him his rookie year and kind of grows into a leadership role. I think who Justin Fields was for this team in 2023 could have been very different than who he was in 2021.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for being humbled. And, maybe that's what is a little discouraging with Justin Fields is there wasn't that acknowledgement that you do need to develop and grow as a pocket passer. Right? I mean, to know if I want to last long-term in the NFL, I need to embrace this world. Lamar Jackson, he embraces that world. Like, he wanted Todd Monken. He wanted receivers. He wanted to develop as a passer and have a more diverse passing game because with Greg Roman, for everything that Greg Roman does great at the line of scrimmage, and it's great. I mean, I've talked to Eric Wood, Richie Incognito here in Buffalo about all the different blocking schemes and the way he can scheme things up in the trenches. It's special, and I bet you with Jim Harbaugh, they do a lot of great stuff out in L.A. together. But when it comes to route running and receivers, there's a reason veteran receivers weren't signing with the Ravens. It was elementary. Was it Steve Smith? I think after the Ravens lost to the Bills in the playoffs, Steve Smith just went on this rant on NFL Network, just trashing it. So I thought it spoke volumes that Lamar, he gets it. Like, as talented as he is as a runner, and he can outrun anybody in this league. He knows to last long term, He's got to be able to thrive from the pocket, and I'm sure he knows to win in the playoffs, that's where he's got to win, and he hasn't been able to do it. He hasn't been able to get over that hump quite yet. Justin Fields, at least publicly, I don't know, it doesn't sound like a quarterback who gets that, who is open to that, and I think that's a problem, right? I mean, and maybe he knows that he can process. That's the way one Super Bowl winning quarterback's coach put it to me, is when he heard that press conference early last season. To him, it was a public declaration from Justin Fields that I cannot read a defense. I need to do it my way. I got a street ball. I got a freelance. And it's fun. I love watching it. You love watching it. Fans love watching it. It will work for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but it's not going to work over the course of a season. And you're not going to be able to stack season to season to season, have a whole career playing that way. You're right. I mean, nobody wants to pile on, but this is just how the NFL views him. I mean, this isn't, in my opinion, your opinion. I mean, there's a reason that there wasn't a trade market for Justin Fields, right?
Right.
It's
the
truth hurts.
That we had talked about that in the entire off season, and I think Bears fans, and this isn't a knock on them, were in denial. Like, oh, and because you hear Schefter and Rappaport, the second round picks the market, and like, all right, that makes sense, and then obviously nowhere near that. So, and obviously polls coming in and having no tie to Fields, and that 2022 season that was torn down around him was obviously, Justin trying to make chicken salad out of what and just running for 1,000 yards like you had talked about. But again, and that's where you just talk about needing to have that established, aligning everything. And that was the huge debate for this fan base right at the end of the season, when a lot of people realized, all right, Fields is probably out here. Matt Eberflus. And they decided to retain him. And there was, and I was one of them that said, you got to line everything up. Let's get an offensive coach in here with Ryan Poles. You're going to draft Caleb Williams, most likely number 1 here. Let's line everything up. The Bears chose to keep Eberflus. And I just want to ask you about this, and then we'll do a Caleb question before I let you go. But this idea, they didn't align it right now. They brought in Shane Waldron. They did a lot of right things. And I think that's where Bears fans are nervous. And now I hear like the schedule coming out in the media goes, well, if they go 8-9, do you fire Matt Eberflus? And I'm screaming at my phone, listening to podcasts or whatever, going, no, like, this is like, whatever you thought of Matt Eberflus and some of the late leads that the Bears blew last year and the issues that he may have had on the sidelines, you need Matt Eberflus to succeed now as a Bears fan. You don't want this cycle to continue where Eberflus is fired at the end of the year, and then who knows what's going to happen with Caleb moving forward. I think that's what's critical here, where they didn't quite line everything up, but they're a lot closer than they ever have been. You need Matt Eberflus, because that's where it's a little weird here. Brad Biggs reported he's on a 4-year deal, so this is year 3. So he's going to be looking for an extension after this year, where they've got to win, but at the same time, now they got to develop a quarterback. So it's got a little bit of that 2021 vibe, but hopefully this team is set up the right way to at least have success, where they, 8 wins feels like the floor right now. 9, 10, 11 wins, depending on how the ball bounces, feels like what they can do as long as Caleb Williams has a competent rookie season. And that looks very possible here. So that they didn't quite, all I'm saying is they didn't quite learn their lessons all the way here with Caleb Williams, but hopefully moving forward here, they understand that he needs the stability and that same group of coaches working with him and the same terminology and everything. And that if things don't go quite as well as they wanted this year and they go 8-9 and miss the playoffs, that keeping Matt Eberflus is far more important than just trying to strike gold at coach.
You just nailed it. I mean, that's why. Okay, like, I get it. This is a great situation for Caleb Williams, because you've got talent. I mean, you've got more talent around you than any first overall pick I can think of. And this isn't Bryce Young looking in that Panthers huddle, This is Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, a damn good offensive line, a defense that Ryan Poles has built up. That Montez Sweat trade, it looks ingenious looking back. It allows you to take the luxury pick in the top 10 with Dunze. So with that comes expectations. Like, when he walks into that huddle, when the Bears take the field, nobody is going to be happy with a 7-10 season and a little hope for the future. I mean, the expectation is to compete, to be part of that 44% club, right? I mean, half the teams in the conference make the playoffs pretty much. So I think that's the expectation, make the playoffs. Because when you then pair that with the coaching situation and that contract for Matt Eberflus and the fact that he's a defensive-minded head coach, and where there's smoke, there's probably a little bit of fire. I'm sure Caleb Williams' camp did have questions about Chicago. We heard it at the Combine when he was asked, what do you want to know about the Bears when you meet with this team? Do you want to win?
Yep.
Which I get it, man. With everything that this team has done to quarterbacks throughout history, a century of history, yeah, I think the Bears had to prove themselves to Caleb Williams more than the other way around. And also, this is the first NIL superstar. 10 mil made at USC, right? I mean, he might look at himself as maybe not the LeBron extreme of getting coaches fired every other year, but he might want his own coach. He might want an offensive-minded guy in control at some point. Let's not race too far ahead of ourselves. I'm with you, Bill. Like, I don't think Bill Belichick, any defensive-minded head coach, is getting more than 7 wins out of Justin Fields last year. So he deserves a chance to have his quarterback, to be paired with his guy, right? Let's let this play out. But you're entering a situation where there are very real expectations, and that can be a great thing or that can be kind of a scary thing.
Sure.
I don't know which way it's going to go, but and I'm not just pandering here to your audience, I promise. But I think the Bears are going to be really good this year. I think that this is the best division in football. I like Caleb Williams. I think he's talented, and the improvisational stuff that we saw at USC was not a necessity. I don't think it was trying to mask an inability to read the field. I think he can do that stuff. And if, as Warren Moon kind of put, you make things simple for him, some 1-2 reads, kind of open up the playbook slowly to him and then let the improvisational stuff happen organically. Don't force it. This is a team that should be able to win 9 games, 10 games. I mean, the Texans just won the division and made the playoffs. Well, why can't this team beat the Texans? You're in the NFC, not the AFC. There's no reason the Bears can't make the playoffs. I really like the Lions and the Packers rosters too. Winning the division might be tough, but there's real reason for hope in Chicago.
Yeah, no, there really is, and this fan base is excited for Caleb Williams for good reason. So, before I let you go, I just got to ask you one question about Caleb Williams here, and I think because this has been so inevitable for so long, Bears fans for the most part have heard, all the improvisational stuff, and those who've been around him, the Lincoln Rileys and Will Hewletts that have said, oh no, he can play on time, he can play within an offense, all the things you need to do that you didn't see as much at USC. But the one thing that really impresses me the most, and I didn't believe a lot of the nonsense that was floated on social media during the season about how he's a diva and he's a bad teammate and all that stuff. I was like, let's just see this play out. But beyond that, how he handles himself, how comfortable he looks and feels, like, even like Justin Fields had some weird things with Barstool where he was mad at him and they were making fun of him and stuff, about how he was dealing with the media. And we know Trubisky and some of the issues he had. And we talked about, you talk about playing in the Chicago market and how it can be a challenge. I think not only can Caleb Williams handle that, I think he's going to embrace it. I think he loves the fact that he's going to come in and break this 75-year curse at quarterback where they haven't had one since Sid Luckman. I think, he wants a statue outside of Soldier Field of him. Like, he wants to be immortal. He just has this mindset of he knows what he wants to accomplish in this league. He's comfortable in his who he is as a person, his personality. He's comfortable dealing with the media. I think he's comfortable being a leader, but understands that there's veterans that have been in this league 5-10 years. He even said it. Hey man, right now I'm just kind of watching the veterans and taking their lead because I've been here 2 weeks. So the mindset to me is what, honestly, over all the things we see on the field, is what's giving me the most confidence that they finally may have gotten this correct.
I'm with you. And if you're going to really break it into those thirds again, evaluation, it's hard to bet against the evaluation. I mean, this is a rare talent. You had the opportunity to draft him. You took him. Organizational dysfunction, we touched on. This is about as close to true alignment as I've seen in
Absolutely.
a long, long time. And then that third, I think, is what should have you most excited. I think that Caleb Williams is equipped mentally to handle what's about to hit him. And it might sound crazy to hear that when we see him sobbing in his mom's arms after a loss to Washington. But man, people who have been around him, scouts who are ultra critical of this stuff, who really get to know these guys through an authentic lens. I mean, they're investigating these prospects. They say that's a strength. They really do view this as the first Gen Z superstar who's had to deal with a lot of backlash on social media. Look, I'm not going to be putting the lip gloss on myself or painting my nails. That's his thing. That's what he wants to do. He took a lot of backlash from it. And what did he do? He kind of took it in stride. He did a video with one of the coaches at USC and said, hey, yeah, your girl loves him, and just kind of laughed it off. So whatever's kind of thrown his way, I think he'll take it the right way. There's no way to prepare for it. I mean, whatever he's about to face at Soldier Field in the NFL, it's going to be different than anything he faced in USC. Don't get me wrong, but you listen to him talk, you talk to people who have been around him. This does strike me as an authentic guy, an authentic personality, somebody behind the scenes who is doing everything he can to develop real relationships with his teammates, which the people I talked to, that was a criticism of Justin Fields at times. I think that when you're comparing Caleb Williams to Trubisky and Fields in all these different ways, the processing, the one-on-one interactions, everything, he gives you hope that it'll be different. You don't know until he's out there, right? I mean, is he going to be able to spin away from an edge rusher with 4.4 speed on his own 2-yard line like he did in college? Probably not. And he's going to have to figure out play to play those situations where he can kind of be himself and freelance and do whatever he wants. And when he does have to stay within the structure and trust Shane Waldron's scheme. So that might take a little time, right? That will be an adjustment. But I think over the long haul, the Bears got a good one here, and they should absolutely be thanking the Carolina Panthers for being terrible last year to make this possible, because it's a much different conversation about Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. I mean, we might be talking about the team that missed out on C.J. Stroud right now.
Oh, absolutely.
They got Caleb Williams, and they might have solved their 105-year quarterback problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said, if Caleb Williams turns out to be the dude, this trade may go down as the best in NFL history. I really think that, like, bigger than the Herschel Walker trade. It could be that good. So there he is, Ty Dunne, golongtd.com. You can check out the 2-part feature on the Bears quarterback problems. It's there right now. A lot of other great content. So make sure you go there, subscribe. You won't be you won't be let down. Ty churns out content at a tremendous rate. Ty, thanks for so much time. It was a great interview. Enjoy your time off, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. Great to see you, man.